A U.S. delegation is in Moscow today, meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, are trying to advance U.S.-led peace efforts.
Putin commented on Europe's part in the ongoing peace process. According to the Russian president, European nations are angered they're not part of the process. He added European nations aren't trying to end the fighting, and they purposely make demands which Russia won't accept.
We
are not planning to fight Europe. I have said this 100 times. But if Europe suddenly decides to wage war against us and starts it, we are ready right now. There can be no doubt about that.
According to the Kremlin, Witkoff and Kushner are the only U.S. representatives joining the talks with Putin. Witkoff and Putin last met in August. Today's talks come just 2 days after Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with the Ukrainian delegation in Florida. The Trump administration highlights its willingness to talk with both sides of the conflict to end the fighting. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky continues his visit to European countries. Zelensky is aiming to help sustain Ukraine's fight against Russia's invasion. After visiting France yesterday, the Ukrainian president is in Ireland today. He's meeting with the Irish Prime Minister and the newly elected president. Zelensky says he's expecting swift reports from the U.S. envoy in Moscow later today. That's to know whether talks can move forward or not. The U.S. recently introduced a 28-point peace plan to resolve the war, but both Russia and Ukraine said they don't agree with some of the points. Zelensky now says if Russia indicates it still wants to find a middle ground, then Ukrainian officials may meet with the U.S. delegation very soon to continue the peace process.
If I feel that we can count on real, specific dialogue, not just words with some result, we will meet, and he's very welcome to Ukraine. The most sensitive things and the most difficult questions or questions with the challenges is about territories. It's about frozen assets, because I can't just myself speak on behalf of European leaders.
And former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez was released from a U.S. prison yesterday. His wife said on social media he was released after President Trump pardoned him. He was serving a 45-year sentence for drug trafficking and firearm charges. President Trump has said Hernandez's trial was a setup. He said he was called a drug dealer because he was the president of the country. Hernandez governed from 2014 to 2022 and was arrested shortly after leaving office. The release came days after a presidential election in Honduras. Trump has backed the conservative National Party candidate Nasri Asfoura, who is from the same party as Hernandez, and the party forged a close partnership with the U.S. under Hernandez. Asfoura and his nearest challenger are very close in the vote counting. And the White House is defending a controversial second military strike on a suspected drug smuggling boat in the Caribbean. The strike killed survivors of an initial attack and has triggered bipartisan scrutiny in Congress.
The White House yesterday confirmed that U.S. forces conducted a second strike on a drug boat in the Caribbean Sea on September 2nd, something the administration initially denied. According to the White House, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth authorized the mission, but Navy Vice Admiral Frank Bradley, then commander of Joint Special Operations Command, ordered and directed the second strike himself. White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt told reporters the admiral was within his legal right to do so.
Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was destroyed and the threat to the United States of America was eliminated.
The Washington Post first reported that U.S. forces observed survivors clinging to the wreckage before ordering the second strike. That reporting raised questions about whether the operation may constitute a war crime. Pressed about the legality of a second strike that targeted survivors, the White House said the operation was lawful and conducted in self-defense.
What law is it that allows no survivors?
The strike conducted on September 2nd was conducted in self-defense to protect Americans in vital United States interests. The strike was conducted in international waters and in accordance with the law of armed conflict.
But Leavitt did not say whether the second strike was ordered specifically because survivors remained in the water. And she said Hegseth did not order Admiral Bradley to leave no survivors.
I saw that quoted in a Washington Post story. I would reject that the Secretary of War ever said that. However, the president has made it quite clear that if narco-terrorists, again, are trafficking illegal drugs towards the United States, he has the authority to kill them.
Chief Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell also pushed back against media reports that said Hegseth ordered all survivors to be killed. On social media, Hegseth defended Bradley as an American hero, saying he stands by his combat decisions. It's one of at least 19 U.S. strikes targeting alleged narco-trafficking vessels in the Caribbean and off the Pacific coast of Latin America since September. The administration says those strikes have killed at least 76 people, but lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are demanding to know more. Democratic and Republican lawmakers overseeing the military said they are investigating the September 2nd strike. House Armed Services Committee Chairman Mike Rogers has said, "We take seriously the reports of follow-on strikes and are taking bipartisan action to gather a full accounting of the operation in question." Bradley will provide a classified briefing to lawmakers on Thursday.
And voters in Tennessee are heading to the polls today for a special election in the state's 7th Congressional District. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
This race is so important for a host of reasons. One is that I think voters are feeling that this Washington Republican economic agenda has not delivered, and that we have a Republican trifecta at the state level, we have a Republican trifecta at the federal level, and groceries aren't cheaper, utilities aren't cheaper, rent isn't cheaper. And so what is the option? It's a candidate who's been fighting for affordability for the past decade.
I'm super excited of the momentum that we have to have the endorsement of the president, and we're going to win decisively tomorrow when everyone gets out to vote. And that's what we're driving first. This is about America first. As the speaker said, the margins in Congress are so narrow, and this is about the direction we want to move our country. And we want to move it in the America first direction. That's what we're going to do.
The Democrats are spending millions of dollars here. They're bringing in all their heavy hitters because they think they can flip this seat from red to blue. That is not going to happen. Matt Van Epps is the candidate, the best to represent Tennessee and Nashville in Washington, D.C.
The seat was vacated by Republican Mark Green, who resigned in June for a private sector job. On the ballot are Republican Matt Van Epps, Democrat Afton Benn, and 4 independents. Both parties made a last-minute push. Republicans rallied with House Speaker Mike Johnson, Senator Marsha Blackburn, and even a call-in from President Trump. Meanwhile, the Democrats held a virtual rally, and it featured Congresswoman Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC, and former Vice President Al Gore. A new poll from Emerson College and The Hill shows a tight race. Epps is at 48%, Ben right on his heels at 46%, and there's a 5% of undecided voters. The district spans 14 counties, including parts of Nashville and Williamson County. It's been held by Republicans since 1983. And sticking with the elections, former Wisconsin Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes is officially running for governor. Barnes launched his campaign today, entering an already crowded Democratic primary for the open seat left by retiring Governor Tony Evers. Barnes is framing his bid as a pushback against what he called, quote, the chaos of the Trump administration, saying he will center his campaign on affordability for families. Barnes argued Wisconsin needs leaders who can, quote, get things done the Wisconsin way, focusing on lowering costs, improving access to health care, and supporting workers. Barnes stayed active politically after his narrow 2022 Senate loss through his PAC supporting Democratic candidates. His entry adds to a wide Democratic field now. The Republican field, on the other hand, is also growing, with Congressman Tom Tiffany and County Executive Josh Schoeman among the contenders. Wisconsin's gubernatorial race is rated a toss-up going into 2026. And the National Guard will deploy in Louisiana this month. That's according to Louisiana Republican Governor Jeff Landry. Landry said yesterday he spoke with President Donald Trump about the plan, in that in 2 weeks, a, quote, specific amount of guardsmen will deploy in New Orleans and other cities to combat crime. Governor said the Guard members would be deployed in New Orleans through Mardi Gras. It's not the first time guardsmen will be active in the state. Last week, Louisiana National Guard were deployed to help with the security for the Bayou Classic, which is an annual festival over Thanksgiving weekend. And in an X post yesterday, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins said she'll be reviewing all benefit programs to ensure only U.S. citizens are receiving the benefits. She wrote that earlier in the year, the Agriculture Department reminded states that illegal immigrants cannot receive SNAP benefits. She says that some Democrat-run states are not turning over the data, but that the department is, quote, using every tool to compel their compliance. In November, a number of states filed a lawsuit over SNAP restrictions. Rollins' ex-post was in response to an earlier post by President Trump, where the president said the refugee burden is the leading cause of social dysfunction in America. He described how the foreign population in the U.S. is at 53 million and that most of them are supported through benefits provided by American taxpayers. And tech billionaire Michael Dell and his wife Susan Dell have pledged more than $6 billion toward the Trump administration's Invest America initiative. That pledge will help support so-called Trump accounts created this year under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. As part of the legislation, the Treasury will deposit $1,000 into investment accounts for all children born between 2025 and 2028. The Dell's contribution amounts to a deposit of $250 into the investment accounts of 25 million American children. The funds will go toward the accounts of children who live in zip codes with a median family income of $150,000 or less. Now, Michael Dell is expected to join Trump at the White House today to announce this contribution. And a focus on education for lawmakers today. Lawmakers debate several bills meant to stop foreign influence in education. And NTD's Melina Witkoff has more about the effort to protect young minds.
There are several bills on the House floor today pretty much addressing the same issue with regards to foreign influence in education, but lawmakers are trying to leave no stone unturned. Collectively, these bills make it illegal for K-12 schools to accept funds or enter into contracts with the Chinese Communist Party or other foreign adversaries. Schools will actually lose federal funding if they do keep this foreign financial support. There's also an effort in these bills to empower parents to police schools on the issue. Under the bills, parents can request detailed information about foreign influence in education and if certain teachers have gotten paid by foreign adversaries. Lawmakers, of course, are mainly concerned about influence coming from the Chinese Communist Party. The chairman of the Education Committee said the biggest concern that he has is the possibility of the regime weakening the U.S. military from within through indoctrination. Listen.
A recent report by Defending Education found that many Confucius classrooms are located near U.S. military bases, which indicate the CCP may be targeting military children for indoctrination. It requires teachers to sign contracts pledging not to, and I quote, damage the national interest of China, end quote.
The chairman says the Chinese regime offers free perks to teachers and students through exchanges, etc., but those perks come at the cost of forcing teachers to allow the Chinese government to dictate how they teach students about the regime, which means that students ultimately wouldn't be learning the truth about the country with the worst human rights record in modern history. Now, those who were opposed said these bills aren't needed because they say the problem doesn't exist.
The reality is that each of these bills is a solution in search of a problem and would ultimately impose unnecessary burdens on our already overstretched K-12 schools.
But the Republican chairman said in recent years there's been evidence of at least 500 schools where the CCP has infiltrated the classroom. Now, this comes as recent polling consistently shows that Gen Z has a more favorable view of socialism than capitalism. A Cato YouGov poll from March this year found that 62% of 18 to 29-year-old Americans have a favorable view of communism. Many are starting to realize that the truth about communism isn't being taught properly to young students. In Florida, the new curriculum to mandate the teaching of the horrors of communism will start next year. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Witkoff, NTD News.
Thanks to Melina for that report. And the possible funding of terror from the American heartland is making headlines today. The Treasury Department is investigating claims that Minnesota taxpayer dollars were stolen through fraudulent nonprofits and then funneled to a terrorist group in Somalia. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more, including reactions from the White House and Governor Tim Walz.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced the inquiry yesterday on X. He says the department is investigating allegations that Minnesotans' tax dollars may have been diverted to the terrorist organization Al-Shabaab under what he called the feckless mismanagement of the Biden administration and Governor Tim Walz. The investigation comes amid concerns over welfare fraud in the state, especially relating to Somali communities. So far, 86 people have been charged in what prosecutors describe as a rampant and widespread fraud scheme. 78 of those charged, 91%, are Somali. The Department of Justice said a Minnesota nonprofit called Feeding Our Future and its affiliates stole more than $240 million in federal funds. It says the organization recruited people to open more than 250 nutrition program sites throughout Minnesota.
A nonprofit and its affiliates with these Somali migrants claim to have fed tens of thousands of American children during the pandemic. They were reimbursed for those meals by taxpayers. However, federal prosecutors found that almost all of those meals were never even delivered to hungry children.
The DOJ says the locations fraudulently claimed to be serving meals to thousands of children a day within just days or weeks of being formed.
In fact, those organizations' leaders spent the money on houses, luxury cars, and real estate in Turkey and Kenya.
Another scheme involved hundreds of organizations reimbursed for services which were supposed to help people at risk of homelessness.
Once again, those services were never provided.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the fraud and abuse occurred under Democrat leadership in a Democrat-run state.
Where these refugees, these migrants are coming to the United States, they are abusing our system, they are draining our resources.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz last week said he would work with the administration to root out fraud, speaking on a local news outlet.
Do not paint an entire group of people with that same brush, demonizing them, putting them at risk when there is no proof to do that. But if you want to help us and you want to go after the criminals and you want to make sure there's no connection or find out where the money went, we welcome that. We'll work with you on that.
Minnesota is home to the nation's largest Somali population at about 87,000. Last month, President Trump announced he was terminating temporary deportation protections for Somalis living in Minnesota, saying Somali gangs are terrorizing people in the state. The move accelerates the end of a program that began in 1991. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And Costco, the third largest retailer in the U.S., is suing the Trump administration over tariffs. Costco filed with the U.S. Court of International Trade on Friday, and it said the legal move is needed in order to secure a full refund in the event the Supreme Court rules against the tariffs. Supreme Court justices heard arguments in the tariffs case last month, but they have not said when a ruling will be made. If the Supreme Court agrees with the federal court that the tariffs are illegal, then the Trump administration could have to make amends. It isn't clear how or whether already paid duties would be refunded. Other companies, including Revlon, Bumblebee Foods, and Kawasaki, as well as some Democrat-led states and politicians, have filed similar lawsuits against the Trump administration. And the Supreme Court is reviewing a case today that centers on faith-based pregnancy centers in New Jersey. But the issue isn't about abortion. It's a question of whether officials can subpoena records which may violate the First Amendment. First Choice Women's Resource Centers is a nonprofit, and it runs crisis pregnancy centers. New Jersey's Democratic Attorney General subpoenaed the group in 2023 as part of an investigation into consumer fraud. The subpoena seeks information on donors to the facilities and the medical personnel who work there, which First Choice says violates the First Amendment. The group wants the Supreme Court to consider whether the subpoena should be handled at the federal level. First Choice says keeping subpoenas at the state level allows state officials to target specific groups that they disagree with politically, and it says that they should concern both parties on both sides of the aisle. And the Transportation Security Administration said yesterday it will begin charging domestic air travelers $45 starting on February 1st if their IDs do not meet stricter federal standards. On November 20th, the TSA said in the Federal Register that the fee would be $18 if travelers did have real ID, but then they said they raised the price due to higher than forecasted expenses. The fees are non-refundable, and it could take travelers up to 30 minutes to pay and then get through security, if not done so before arriving at the airport. Now, the $45 fee would cover travel for a 10-day period, so if you're doing a round-trip ticket, shouldn't have to pay that fee twice. Now, travelers can also use a government-issued passport, permanent resident cards, and military IDs, among some others that are acceptable. DHS says now that 94% of passengers are already compliant, and the new fee, it's intended to encourage travelers to upgrade to a real ID. And President Trump is now hosting a cabinet meeting at the White House. Let's tune in.
Many leaders, we had a dead country. Now we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. It's true. The hottest country anywhere in the world. Think of that. In 4 long years of the Biden administration, there were just $1 trillion of new investments in the United States in 10 months. We've secured commitments of over $18 trillion. So they had, in 1 year, less than $1 trillion. That's in a period of 4 years. Think of it, 4 years they had less than $1 trillion. In 10 months, we have more than 18 trillion. Is that right, Scott? It's even going to be higher than that.
It'll be higher by
and
the
going
end of
up.
the year,
And we're waiting for the Supreme Court case, and it's so important and so vital for this country because we're not only respected again, we're putting out wars by our trade policies, and we're taking in hundreds of billions of dollars, and our country is wealthy again and secure again, and it's part of national security, and I hope that goes well. I think it's very important, but think of the number. We're going to be over $18 trillion in 10 months, and which is a record times probably 8 or 10 times, I think more than that, for any country. There's never been a country that's had that kind of an investment ever in history. And there's never been a country that's had half of that. It's a tremendous thing that's taking place. We have companies moving in from all over the world, from Mexico, from Canada, from Europe, from China, from Japan a lot. We just had Toyota is going to spend $10 billion, they just announced, on building new plants in this country. Our workers, they're going to be our workers, but they're spending a tremendous amount. So the stock market has set 46 all-time highs, and this last Friday, which is called Black Friday, was the biggest ever online sales that there's ever been by a lot. More Americans are working today than at any time in the history of our country. I mean, these are the facts we have to get out. And, you know, there's this fake narrative that the Democrats talk about, affordability. They just say the word. It doesn't mean anything to anybody. They just say it. Affordability. I inherited the worst inflation in history. There was no affordability. Nobody could afford anything. The prices were massively high. Do you remember when we took over eggs? You did a great job on that, Madam Secretary. Agriculture, Brooke. Eggs were 4 or 5 times higher than they had ever been. They said, don't order eggs for Easter at the White House. And we ended up doing it, and we got the egg prices way down, lower than what they were before. But the word affordability is a con job by the Democrats. They say affordable. I watched the other day where some very low IQ congresswoman talked about affordability, affordability, affordability. She had no idea. Their prices were much higher. As an example, energy, gasoline, we're now at about $2.50 a gallon. We're going to be, I think, at $2 a gallon. We could even crack that at some point. I'd love to do it. And we could do it more easily if we weren't building up the strategic national reserves, which Biden emptied out before the election so that he could try and get elected, meaning he started it, then he got thrown out of the race. Then she took over and she kept it going, and they emptied out these strategic national reserves, which are really meant for something else. They're not meant to keep people happy with their gasoline price. They're meant for war. They're meant for problems, big problems. He emptied it out, and then she continued it during the process of trying to get elected. Didn't work out too well for him. And they virtually brought it down to the lowest level, I believe, in history. And it didn't have much of an impact because the prices were very high. But our prices now for energy, but for gasoline, are really low. Electricity's coming down. And when that comes down, everything comes down. But the word affordability is a Democrat scam. They say it, and then they go on to the next subject. And everyone thinks, oh, they had lower prices. No, they had the worst inflation in the history of our country. Now, some people will correct me, because they always love to correct me, even though I'm right about everything. But some people like to correct me, and they say 48 years. I say it's not 48 years, it's much more. But they say it's the worst inflation that we've had in 48 years. I say ever. But whether it's 48 years or ever, it's pretty bad. We had the worst inflation that we've ever had. Since last January, we've stopped inflation in its tracks. And there's still more to do. There's always more to do, but we have it down to a very good level. It's going to go down a little bit further. You want to have a little tiny bit of inflation. Otherwise, that's not good either. Then you have a thing called deflation. And deflation can be worse than inflation. But we have it almost, we'll soon be at a perfect level. But we inherited the worst inflation. But we have 20 states that are now selling gasoline at less than the $2.75. Think of that, $2.75. And it was at $5 under Sleepy Joe. Grocery prices are down with the cost of Thanksgiving turkey this year down 33%. It was lower than 33% lower than under the Biden administration. Egg prices are way down 86%, thank you. And mortgage rates, despite the fact that we have an incompetent chairman of the Fed, a real dope, who should reduce rates. I saw even Jamie Dimon said he should be reducing rates. I never saw Jamie Dimon say that. I wonder why he said that. But he really said it because he's right. But we have a guy that's just a stubborn ox who probably doesn't like your president, your favorite president. But they're going to be coming down. We'll be announcing somebody probably early next year for the new chairman of the Fed. I talked to Scott about taking the job, but he doesn't want it. You got the greatest job here.
Yes, sir.
Right? He said, no, I want to stay chairman. I want to stay right where we are, Treasury. And I think we're doing really great, aren't we?
We're doing great, sir, and it's a great team to be part of.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Under my executive order to lower prescription drug prices, which I think is the single biggest thing we've ever done that nobody writes about because you're fake news. I've made unprecedented deals along with Bobby and Oz and all of the people that work on it. A lot of people that you wouldn't even think work on it, but they do, to slash drug prices by 200%, 300%, 400%, 500%, 600%, 700%, 800%. Nobody's ever heard of it before because I instituted favored nations and no nation agreed to do it. And then I said to the nations, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to charge you 100% tariff, which is more money than we're talking about. And they said, sir, we'd love to do it. Please, we would be honored to do it. And they agreed that they would go along with the whole thing. Nobody thought you could do it because they felt, number one, you couldn't get the drug companies to do it. So we're paying, as an example, for the, let's call it the fat drug, F-A-T, for fat people. Anybody use it at the table? Don't ask. But the fat drug was $135. Think of that. For certain people, $1,300 for certain countries, $1,300 in New York. So in New York, it was $1,300. And in London, it was $135. And a friend of mine called me, he said, what is this? Why is it? He got used to paying $1,300. Well, now what we have it down to is, Bobby, what's the number? Like 150 or something? We have it down to a low number, don't we?
Yeah, it's around 100, 125, 150.
Yeah, think of that. So we got it down from $1,300 to $125 to $140, depending on various countries. In other words, we're paying the lowest price, tied for the lowest price in the world. As people said, you could never do that because you couldn't get the countries to agree to it. I did. Every country agreed to it because I said, if you're not going to agree to it, that's okay, I'm going to charge you tariffs. And as soon as I said that, they said, we agree. And then we had to be a little tough with the drug companies, but they came along. The bigger problem was the countries. The countries just wouldn't go along with it, but they did. Every country. So we have reduced drug prices by 500, 600, 700, 800, 900%, depending on the drug, depending on the company, depending on all of the different factors involved. Nobody's ever even thought of drug reductions like that, price reductions. And I told you the story that in my first term, I was so proud of myself because I reduced drugs. It was the first time in 28 years that drug prices were reduced. It was 1/4%, 1/4%. And I was so proud of myself. I said, it's the first time in 28 years that drug prices went down over the course of a year over the course of a presidency. 1 year, 0.25%. I had a news conference. I was so proud. Now I got them down, not 0.25%. I got them down 400, 500, 600% and more. And the fake news won't write about it. And it's going to have a huge impact on healthcare because a big part of it's buying drugs, buying prescription drugs. It's going to have a huge positive impact because Obamacare is a disaster. I said it years ago and I say it now. And the money should be paid, taken away from the insurance company. Obamacare was made to make the insurance companies rich. Their stocks have gone up 1,000% in a short period of time because the money goes to the insurance company. I want the money to go to the people. Let all the money go to the people. And let the people go out and buy their own health care. And I see on television, people are advertising now, we will help you buy health care. We will go out and help you buy. That's becoming like an industry because of what I said. So something's going to happen. It's probably not going to be easy because the Democrats, frankly, they don't want to make a good deal for the people. They just want to make a bad deal for the country. They want to make a bad deal for the Republican Party. But the Republican Party is united. And I will say that what I would like to do is the money doesn't go, trillions of dollars get paid to drug companies. And you still have lousy health care. Obamacare is horrible health care. We want it to go to the people and then let the people go out and buy their own health care. And they'll do great. They'll do great. So we're negotiating that now with the Democrats. Well, Congressional Democrats want the largest tax hike in history. I proudly signed the largest tax cuts in American history with the Great Big Beautiful Bill. The Great Big Beautiful Bill, the biggest piece of legislation ever signed, and that includes the extension of the original Trump tax cuts. But it's the biggest tax cut ever signed, and it includes no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security. Nobody's ever seen anything like it, so think of that. And in addition, you get, if you buy a car, this is great for our car industry because we have a lot of car plants. We're bringing back the automobile business. 60% of it was stolen because we had incompetent presidents or incompetent trade people. But 60% of it was stolen over the years, and now I think we're bringing it all back. I think we'll be bigger than we've ever been in the auto business. That's not even to mention AI, where we're leading China. You know, we're leading China by a lot. They're not going to catch us. We have to be smart, but if we're smart, they're not going to be able to catch us. They know that. They told me that. Next year is projected to be the largest tax refund season ever. And we're going to be giving back refunds out of the tariffs because we've taken in literally trillions of dollars. And we're going to be giving a nice dividend to the people, in addition to reducing debt. As you know, I inherited a lot of debt, but it's peanuts compared to the kind of numbers we're talking about. So we're going to be making a dividend to the people. And additionally, we're going to be able to reduce debt. And as time goes by over the next 2, 3, 4 years, those numbers are going to go up. And I believe that at some point in the not too distant future, you won't even have income tax to pay because the money we're taking in is so great, it's so enormous, that you're not going to have income tax to pay. Whether you get rid of it or just keep it around for fun or have it really low, much lower than it is now, but you won't be paying income tax. We've slashed $1 trillion in costly job-killing regulations, saving Americans an estimated $2,100 for a family of 4. The Biden administration was the exact opposite, but times 4. They went up $6,000. We went down $2,100. Think of that. To bring down energy, electricity, and utility prices, I ended the Green New Scam. They call it the Green New Scam, one of the greatest scams in the history of our country. They talked about global warming and all that crap, and what they've done to this country. What they've done by allowing 25 million people into our country, many of whom are criminals, many of whom, 11,888 are murderers, and we have to get them out, and we're doing it. We're doing it. I think what the job that our law enforcement groups are doing, Christy, you and Tom and everybody, amazing. What you're doing is amazing. I terminated the insane electric vehicle mandate. And look, some people that make electric cars weren't happy with that. But we have to do that because you have to have a choice, whether it's a gasoline-powered car. And we have so much gasoline. You know, China doesn't have gasoline. We do. And whether it's a hybrid, which really are working really well, the combination of electric and gasoline-driven. But we, everybody was supposed to, by 2030, everybody had to own an electric car under the Biden stupidity. And not everybody wants to do that. I like electric cars. I like all cars. They're all good. They all have reasons. But you want to be able to go and buy what you want. I imposed historic tariffs that are now bringing in so much money that nobody's ever seen anything like it. And countries that were ripping us off, including allies, but they were ripping us off for years. I won't use the names. I won't mention Japan. I refuse to mention South Korea. I will not mention names. But they were ripping us off like nobody's ever been ripped off before, and taking horrible advantage of your country. But now we're making a lot of money. We're making a lot of money because of the tariffs that are pouring in. And it's really national security. Among everything else, it's national security. We've also rapidly turned the worst border crisis in world history. I believe we had the worst border ever in history. I don't care if you had a fourth world country. You know, we allow third world country in. We would allow fourth world war countries in also. It doesn't matter. There was never a border that was as bad as our border. We allowed anybody in with no checks, no vetting. So we've rapidly turned the worst border crisis in world history into the strongest border in the history of our country, and probably one of the strongest borders in the history of the world, because we have nobody coming through. And I want to thank our people. The Border Patrol is so amazing, ICE, and I want to thank the military for the backup, because they're standing right behind them. And that was really nasty for a period of months, and now it's no longer nasty. Now they don't even come up. Nobody comes up. It's an easy job. It made your job a lot easier because they know they're not going to get through. And we take people in, but they have to come in legally. For 6 months in a row, 0 illegal aliens have been admitted into the United States. You believe that? 0. We had millions of people coming in a year, millions. Now we have 0 for 6 months, and these are given by radical left people that do the numbers. I mean, they're not doing me any favor. They're being. We don't have our net numbers are unbelievable. But we had 0 people in the last 6 months. Illegal border crossings along the U.S.-Mexico border have plummeted to the lowest level ever recorded. And nobody talks about that anymore. You know, it's crazy. They don't talk about it. You think they'd say, well, Trump's done a great job at the border. This country is being destroyed by the border. But you always find something new, like, is he in good health? Biden was great, but is Trump in good health? I sit here, I do 4 news conferences a day. I ask questions from very intelligent lunatics, you people. I give the right answers. There's never a scandal. There's never a problem. I give you answers that solve your little problems. You go back and you can't find anything, but you do stories about Biden was in wonderful health. The guy didn't do a news conference for 8 months. If I go one day, I had one day where I didn't do a news conference, there's something wrong with the president. You people are crazy. I'll let you know when there's something wrong. There will be someday. That's going to happen to all of us. But right now, I think I'm sharper than I was 25 years ago, but who the hell knows? By the way, I took my physical. I got all A's, everything. But they said to me, would you like to take a cognitive test? I said, is it hard? They said, yes. I said, well, I'm a very smart person. Who was the last president to take one? No president has ever agreed to take one. Because when you get into the mid-questions, meaning, 10, question number 10, 11, 12, 28, 30, they get harder and harder. And they said, would you like to do it? I said, well, no reason to do it. Nobody's ever done it. I'll do it maybe, but there's really no reason. They said, sir, the problem is this is Walter Reed Hospital, and that's a military hospital. And that means that things are, you know, sort of open. It's not like private where you have, if you do poorly, we'll have to, probably you'll find out. I said, I won't do poorly. I'm a smart person, not a stupid person. And as the doctor will tell you, I aced it. Right, Susie? I aced. I got every question right. And these are tough questions. These are questions that I would say 99% of the people that I'm talking to right now, meaning the people from the fake news, would not do well in those exams. But I'm the only one that took it. I got every single question right. And then I read in the New York Times, is Trump sharp? Trump is sharp. But they're not sharp. That's why they're going out of business, the New York Times. I hear that they're losing so much money, it's ridiculous. They're a bunch of fakers. But we have, we can never let another thing happen like what happened to us with a fake election, with a rigged election, where a guy like Joe Biden assumes the presidency. Because the man was grossly incompetent. And he was incompetent 30 years ago. But he was really incompetent for those last few years. And our country was put at great danger because of it. So for 6 months in a row, we had 0 people. Illegal border crossings along the U.S.-Mexico border have plummeted to the lowest level ever, ever, ever. Think of that. And the net benefit to our country is enormous, incalculable. America is strong and respected again. On the world stage, we're really respected. In fact, I went to a NATO and they were calling me the president of Europe. We're doing very well. We have a lot of respect. As you know, we have a problem with a war that our people are trying to settle now with Russia and Ukraine. We are not involved in the war monetarily anymore. Biden gave away $350 billion like it was candy. That's a massive amount of money. And much of it in cash, a lot of it in equipment. I don't give away anything. We sell the equipment to NATO. The European nations pay us for the equipment, 100% price. And then they bring it to Ukraine or whatever they do with it. But we're trying to get that settled. I've settled 8 wars. This would be the 9th. And our people are over in Russia right now to see if we can get it settled. Not an easy situation. Let me tell you what a mess. It's a war that never would have happened if I were president. Not even a chance. And it didn't happen for 4 years. We've renamed the Department of Defense the Department of War, and I thought that would be controversial. And frankly, I tell you what, I haven't met one person, there's not one person I've met that doesn't like it. You know, think of it. We won World War I, World War II, everything in between, everything before it. And then we said, let's change the name. So we changed it back to what it was, Department of War, and Pete's doing a great job. We ended 8 wars, think of that. 8 wars, but we're going to do one more, I think. I hope. I hope. Every time I end a war, they say, if President Trump ends that war, he's going to get the Nobel Prize. If I end that war. Well, he won't get it for that war, but if he ever gets it for the next war, now they're saying, if he ever ends the war with Russia and Ukraine, he's going to get the Nobel Prize. What about the other 8 wars? India, Pakistan. Think of all the wars I ended. I should get the Nobel Prize for every war, but I don't want to be greedy. Actually, the woman who got the Nobel Prize said, "You've got to be kidding. Trump deserves the Nobel Prize." So that was very nice of her. I appreciate it, which is true, actually. But I don't care about that. You know what I care about? I care about death. I care about all the people that are dying. And last month, 27,000 young people died, mostly young people, mostly soldiers, despite some missiles being shot into Kiev and other places. But think of it, mostly young people. 27,000 people died between Russia and Ukraine last month. What a shame. So we're restoring law and order to our cities and towns. If you look at what's happened, and I want to pay my deepest respects to those 2 incredible people from the National Guard in West Virginia they came from. I spoke to their parents. Sarah is gone. She passed away. She's looking down on us now, and she loves her parents, and they loved her. They Somebody said, how are they doing? I said, the word is devastated. Doing. How are they going to do? They're devastated. The rest of their lives they're going to be devastated. She was an incredible person, highly respected, top of her class, everything. She was like a perfect human being. 20 years old, just started. She was like a baby. She was so proud. They were giving her a promotion. And she told the parents that she was getting a promotion, and they were so proud of her. Then they get a call that this happened. And we have one young man who's fighting for his life. He's fighting very hard. I think he's probably doing better than anybody. They said he didn't have a chance. I'll tell you, the one who said he's going to live is his mother. Spoke to his mother. Sir, he's going to live. I spoke to her very soon after this horrible event took place with this scum that is able to come into our country. I spoke to his mother. Sir, he's going to be okay. I'm telling you. No doctor thought that. Nobody thought that. He was hitting bad places, and she was like so positive. It was incredible. And it's possibly right, Pam, right? Possibly right. Boy, it would be amazing. If he lives, it would be amazing. A miracle, actually. But we're very proud of those two people. We're very proud of the National Guard. We're very proud of our military and our police and our firemen and women. If you go back and take a look a year ago, year and a half ago, it will change, I think, on November 5th, the day of the election. But you go back before that, you couldn't get people to join the military, Pete, right? They didn't want anything to do with military. They wanted nothing to do with joining the police or the fire. They wanted nothing to do with anything. They had no spirit. The country had no spirit, nothing. And now we just had the highest recruitment in history, and we're getting great people. We're getting great people. And I will say, despite what just happened, Washington, D.C. has become a really safe place. And I guess this lunatic probably was upset that the National Guard is so effective, because we were really, really effective, and we are. And Washington, D.C. is now considered a very, very safe city. We had crime numbers a year ago that was so bad, embarrassment, that the city, the capital of this country, could have numbers like that. And Washington now is, no murders, no this. It's been a miracle also what happened here. And now we're in Memphis, and we're going to New Orleans pretty soon. Over there, the governor called me. He'd like to have us go there. Governor Landry, great guy, great governor. He's asked for help in New Orleans, and we're going to go there in a couple of weeks. And we're doing a real job. Even Chicago's down a little bit because we have a minor force there. We could knock it down within 4 or 5 weeks. We could bring it down to almost nothing. But we have a governor that's grossly incompetent, and we have a mayor that's even more incompetent than the governor. He's a very low IQ person. And typically low IQ people don't make good mayors. So I want to thank all of our cabinet members. They're high IQ. Let me say one. Yeah, generally speaking, a couple of them a little concerned about. No, but I want to thank, we have a great cabinet, an amazing cabinet, amazing people. All of them, sort of have become stars. We're getting credit for the good cabinet, actually. And I just want to wish everybody a great holiday. We've I think done a great job with the White House, bringing the White House back. You see the Palm Court that was redone. The Lincoln bedroom was redone. The Lincoln bathroom is now gorgeous, like it should have been. It was terrible green tile that was never the way it was supposed to be. It was done in the 1940s, actually, but it was not proper. And we're restoring the White House just like we're restoring the country, and people are thrilled. But the First Lady's done a beautiful job with the Christmas trees and all the decorations. I see the wreaths on the windows. I've never seen that before, on the windows of the White House. And it's 4 stories high. I said, how did they get that wreath? They had people going up in a little dangerous. I wouldn't want to do it. But they put them up, and we have wonderful people working in the White House, and they're really proud to bring the building back. Because this building was a little bit like the country. It was mishandled. It was mistreated. And now it's being given love. And we're building one of the great, I think, maybe the greatest ballroom. We needed it for 150 years. They've been asking. You see the trucks and cranes and excavators in the background, and you hear them, and every time I hear them, I love the sound. To me, I love the sound. I wouldn't say my wife is thrilled. She hears pile drivers in the background all day, all night. They go till 12 o'clock in the evening, day, night, pile drivers. Darling, could you turn off the pile drivers? Sorry, darling, that's progress. But no, we're doing great. It's going to be I think it's going to be the finest ballroom ever built, and we're going to have it here. They've wanted it for 150 years. Think of that. So I will just end by saying I want to thank the cabinet. It's been a great cabinet. Let's think of it. Time flies, but this is our last of the year, as I said, and I just think you've done a fantastic job. And we're going to go around the room. We'll go quickly, but we're going to go around the room, and we'll start with Pete, and you'll tell us about some of the achievements. And some of you have achievements that are so big, I don't want you to go through the whole thing because we don't have time. But we'll start with Pete, and then if you want, we'll take some questions at the end. Please, Pete.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. As you said, it has been a historic year at the Department of War. Recruiting and retention over this year are at the most historic levels our country has ever seen. I had a chance to be on an aircraft carrier destroyer over Thanksgiving. The spirit in our ranks since the election under President Trump is unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it as a soldier myself in uniform, and I know a lot of you feel the same way. We've ripped out the DEI and the political correctness. It's all merit-based at the department. We're getting back to basics: accountability, training, readiness, lethality, and that's reviving that spirit. And Mr. President, we're rebuilding the military, historic investments. I just took briefings on the Golden Dome and F-47, next generation capabilities that are going to make sure that for generations to come, America has the most powerful, most capable, most lethal military in the world, which you have rebuilt once and we're rebuilding again. And then we're reestablishing deterrence and credibility. If you look at what happened, we deal with every day the outcome of what happened in Afghanistan, the debacle under Joe Biden. We just dealt with it in the streets of Washington, D.C. with those 2 National Guardsmen. And then what happened on October 7th with Hamas, what happened in Ukraine, a war that never would have started under President Trump. We're having to rebuild that. So whether it's freedom of navigation and taking the fight to the Houthis, whether it's Midnight Hammer, those beautiful B-2s going 37 hours back and forth, undetected, delivering with precision, and Iran not getting nuclear capabilities, Europe and NATO stepping up to 5%, locking down our southwest border. It's been an honor to work with Christy and Tom and everyone else down there to lock it to 0, operational control of our border. And then it's getting after and going after narco-terrorists and designated terrorist organizations in our own hemisphere. As I've said, and I'll say again, we've only just begun striking narco boats and putting narco terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people. And Joe Biden tried to approach it with kid gloves and allowed them to come across the border. Cartels take over community, 20 million people, hundreds of thousands of Americans poisoned. And President Trump said, no, we're taking the gloves off. We're taking the fight to these designated terror organizations, and that's exactly what we're doing. So we're stopping the drugs, we're striking the boats, we're defeating narco-terrorists, and we're standing...
And you may say one thing, that drugs coming in through the sea by sea are down 91%. And I don't know who the 9% is.
I'm not sure either, sir.
But down 91% by sea.
We've had a bit of a pause because it's hard to find boats to strike right now, which is the entire point, right? Deterrence has to matter, not arrest and hand over and then do it again, the rinse and repeat approach of previous administrations. This is meant to get after that approach. And I will just end by saying, as President Trump always has our back, we always have the back of our commanders who are making decisions in difficult situations, and we do in this case and all these strikes. They're making judgment calls and ensuring that they defend the American people. They've done the right things. We'll keep doing that, and we have their backs, Mr. President.
Good job. Thank you very much.